At or above fair market value is the intent that the city would bring back.
It's the intent, but it's not, we're not obligated to vote for it.
You're never required to vote for it.
Right. I think that's what you implied.
Okay. I'll let her answer that to make sure she says it right.
Okay.
So again, that's our presentation, I guess, and is there any further questions then?
I don't have any. Do you have any?
Nope. Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve 6A and 6B. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Concurred. Item 7 is to authorize the chief engineer and general manager and district council to initiate litigation against Progress Farms and any related parties to collect past due amounts owing to the district pursuant to the recycled water and lease agreement, and the approximate amount is shown on the agenda, including attorney fees.
We did receive a check for $198,000. So I'd like to amend this to say that if the check doesn't clear, we can move forward. If it does clear, then we're good to go, correct?
Correct.
So I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. You have to say you concur.
Concurred. Item 8 is to authorize payment to High Desert Dairy Van Dam for repairs to irrigation equipment at the Lancaster Water Reclamation Plant, Eastern Agricultural Site, in the amount as shown on the agenda.
Just a quick note on this. This is when we were transitioning from Progress Farms to Van Dam to farm on our land with recycled water. With our equipment, our pivots and so forth. The time frame for that transition was very short, and so rather than us upgrade and maintain the equipment that was there, Mr. Van Dam repaired the equipment, and we've looked at the costs that he's asking for reimbursement, and we think it's fair. Again, we would have had to do it ourselves anyway, so we're asking authority to reimburse Mr. Van Dam.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Concurred. Item 9 is regarding the construction of the Lancaster Water Reclamation Plant, Eastern Agricultural Site, groundwater extraction wells installation. It's an A through E item. Would you like me to read each one individually?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to get a presentation, correct?
Yes, sir. That's what the slides are for this time.
Okay.
You still have them?
I do.
Okay, so back in November, a year ago, we entered into a lease with Calandry Farms, and a representative of that entity is here today, to lease some surplus land owned by District 14 that had been acquired for the purposes of farming with reclaimed water, and is not needed at this time, and also a fraction of those water rights I just talked about in item number 6. And the district, as pursuant to that lease, was to construct wells for the lessee to use to irrigate the crops on that land by September 2018.
Okay, let's go back a second. When you say crops, let's define the crops, because I understand Mr. Calandry is looking at doing multiple crops.
When we entered into the lease, our discussion was about vegetable farming.
Are we going to amend this lease? Is that what we're doing?
I guess we'll have to hear what the board has to say at this point.
That's a question I have to you.
Yeah. Okay,
Is
so
that the purpose of this?
I think, well, okay, the purpose is that we either award for the construction of the wells that we would need for us to comply with the provisions of the lease, or if the board does not choose to award construction contracts for the wells, then you would have to give us direction to go back and amend the lease, because there are provisions in the lease that we are not in compliance with at this time.
Okay.
We had advertised back in the spring of 2018, and we only got one bid. Unfortunately, the local drilling company upon which the cost estimates that were presented to the board were based went out of business this spring. And so we got one bid for a number that was a lot higher than the board had anticipated previously, for $4 million. And at our June board meeting, the board rejected the bids and directed staff to go back and re-advertise. The board also directed us to try to re-advertise for 2 different drilling methods. There had been discussions at these board meetings as to the appropriateness of a lower cost drilling method in conditions in this valley. So we went back and took bids again. We did not get any bids for the direct mud. That's the lower, or excuse me, the preferred method according to some of the local farmers here. But we did get bids for the reverse circulation method.
So it's rotary mud. Is that what
Yeah.
I remember?
So I'm trying to keep it simple. So let's keep it simple. But if you recall, I have a.
Is that because Austin's here?
No, I'm sorry, sir. So we have direct.
You know how complex things are here.
Direct mud, we call it, and then the other term we use, but you're right, it's mud rotary is the term that the industry would use. And then reverse circulation is the other type that we've talked about that's a little bit lower cost. So the board had concerns with the different drilling methods. We went back out to bid, trying to get a lower cost and preferably a mud drilling cost if we could. We got additional bids for the not preferred method, I guess I would call it, and we negotiated with one entity for a bid for mud drilling. And then the board in August was not satisfied with that or chose not to move forward and sent us back to try to get another bid for mud rotary, which we did. And so now we have 2 bids before you for mud, and we have 3. So if you go to the page that says proposals and bids received, so this is what's before the board today. On the left-hand side, the direct mud or mud rotary, we have 2.895 million is the low, and we have another one at 3.6. Those are negotiated. Again, they were proposals, they weren't negotiated, they were proposals received outside of a regular bid. And for a little bit less money, 2.6 million was the low bid for the reverse circulation method. So if you go to the next page then to summarize, our cost going forward to move forward with the lease as agreed to is about 3.3 million if we use the direct mud drilling method, which again, I don't want to put words into the board's mouth, but it seemed to be the preference. We would also need to purchase diesel engines to run those pumps. They're out in an isolated area. The cost of providing electricity to those is prohibitive. And we would also need to retain a consultant, our existing consultant. We'd like to propose to bring him along to support us in terms of overseeing the work to make sure that we get what we pay for. The lease revenue was originally anticipated to be 2.1 million or $2.08 million. That was based on the farmer beginning to farm in January of 19. That's not going to be possible even if the board awards the drilling contracts today. It's going to take these drillers 4 or 5, 6 months maybe to get them all done. Maybe we can do a few at a time and work our way toward it. But there will be less rent in accordance with the lease. If we are not able to provide the water that's desired by the lessee, then he pays less rent. So our revenue over the remaining life of the lease would be somewhere less than $2 million. So we go to the last slide, or second to last, there's the last slide. So option 1 is the board can choose the lowest cost drilling method, and we would come out about 1.26 million below what basically net after we investment in the site. But of course we would have the asset at the end. That was a very important thing to the board in the past, was to have an asset at the end of the thing. In this case it would be a ranch and wells. Or option 2, we can go with the reverse circulation method. Did I say that wrong then? Okay, so the first one is the mud, 1.26. The second one is 1.1 for the reverse circulation, a little bit lower cost well drilling method, but there's some perception there's more risk. Or 3, we can reject all bids and proposals, and if the board so desires, we would have to negotiate some new lease terms with Mr. Calandri. So that's where we're at. It's just weighing, it's cost a little bit more than we thought when coming into the project, but that's where we are right now. And we're just looking for a board's input on going forward.
Let me talk to Mr. Calandri.
Good morning.
Brendan, you've been here over a year.
Yes, sir. Quality time.
What's the problem?
Well, the problem that we have now is we're outside of the terms of the lease and the expectations set forth.
Who do you consider is at fault at that?
I wouldn't point any finger at anybody being at fault. It's just something that happened. What I would ask is, in the lease, it is specified that I have no transferability of the water rights out there on the sanitation ground. I have an amendment to the lease that I brought with me that includes the transferability of the water to allow me to farm on some other ground because you guys are not going to be ready on time. And ultimately, I want to work with you guys. I don't want to be a thorn in anybody's side. This is one way that would accommodate what we need for our farming needs this year. In addition to that, the amendment also includes verbiage to allow me to grow hemp out on the sanitation district. We are currently looking and exploring the ability to move into the hemp industry, and it will be a federally legal and state legal program through the guidelines of a research basis with Antelope Valley College. And
Is that the one Wilk's been working on?
Yes, that's correct. So I've got the amendment here to the lease. I request that you guys take a look at it, give it some consideration. And also in the amendment to the lease, there's also verbiage asking if the wells are going to be done by April 1st, which I don't know what the likelihood of that is. Both of the well drilling companies are here in the audience. They could probably speak better to that than I could.
Here's my problem. We keep kicking this down the road.
Yes, sir.
And down the road and down the road. And what can we transfer? How long do you want to transfer the water rights?
Well, for sure for this year's, for 2019.
Well, I
This
don't want to
coming year.
transfer the water rights and then give you the ability to transfer the water rights under the lease, and then because at the end of this, we want to have farming land and part of it. So what is the legal ramifications of it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we can't amend the lease at today's meeting. It's not agendized, but I'd be happy to look at Mr. Calandri's proposed amendment and report back to the board.
Okay, that's what I don't, how come we keep kicking this down the it's frustrating to me that, you know, we should have agendized. Have you been talking with the sanitation district?
Yes, sir, I have.
Do they know about this amendment?
I told them that I was going to come present an alternative today.
When did you tell them?
Stan, I don't know, when did we talk? About a week ago, 10 days ago, more or less.
So for us to do this correctly, we've got to kick this all down the road or till our next meeting.
Well, but Mr. Director, if you'd like to agendize a special meeting, we'd be able to do that. If we wanted to do it in a shorter time period, then I think December 20th is our currently scheduled next meeting. But there's definitely
Don't we
legal-
have the ability to do it with 2/3 votes?
If there's an item that came to the attention of the board members after the publishing of the agenda and there's a need to take action.
Doesn't this meet that criteria?
I'm not sure. I was not aware of the proposed amendment,
It
Mr.
just,
Chairman, until
we were just
this
made aware
moment.
of it. So does it meet the criteria that we could do it now?
I don't think it does.
Okay, what does meet the criteria?
Typically an urgent issue.
Okay, we're in default of our lease, correct?
Correct, and usually if we were gonna do an
Wait. So if
Sorry.
we're in default of the lease, does that not indicate that there's some type of urgency?
Typically, if we were gonna do it on an emergency basis, it would have to be, there's some risk to the agency that's usually about life or health or physical circumstances.
Or money?
Not typically just money, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay. You okay with kicking all this down the road?
Not really. I'd like to see something get.
Well, we
done
can't.
in this.
We can't. We need to protect his rights, but we want to protect our rights too. So if we can't,
Do we need to do a special meeting?
yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
Can I ask? I'm sorry.
So what's the right amount of time?
So, Mr. Chairman, I was going to note, we have some items on the agenda, and I'm not sure if you consider them connected to or different from the lease. Obviously, they're related to the lease, but the determination whether to move forward or not with the wells can be separated, and the movement on the wells could, motion on the wells could be entertained today.
If we
To support
put
the
the
range as a
wells
whole.
in place and then he doesn't want the lease, is the legal obligation on him? So we have $2.5 million worth of wells. He decides he's not going forward with the lease because we're in breach of the lease right now.
Technically, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So why would I do that to him?
I'm not sure if I understand your question, Mr. Chairman.
Is the sanitation district in breach of its lease currently?
With respect to installation of the wells by September 2018, yes, it is,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
So we need to move forward with that. How about if we go ahead and, if we move forward with leases as far as the wells and not make him liable for those wells if the lease doesn't go through?
When you say not liable for those wells, could you tell me more what you mean?
We're in breach currently, correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. He wants an amendment. He's saying he gave it to you guys a week ago.
I'm
It's
sorry, that was not my understanding. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. My understanding was he brought it with him today, and I've just heard about it, and I've not seen that proposed amendment.
Okay, I'm telling you what he said. He said he brought it to you a week ago, correct?
I never gave anybody at the sanitation district a copy of the amendment. I just spoke to Stan from the sanitation district about coming in, presenting this today to you guys.
Okay.
So we're gonna need to do a special meeting.
And Mr. Chris, I do have it with me. I spoke to Stan, like I said, 7 to 10 days ago, told him, some of the issues that we had here, and thought it was in the best interest to present it to you guys today.
Okay, we can't make amendment on the current lease under this agenda?
Correct.
Okay.
We can commit to agendizing a special meeting ASAP for this single item, if you'd like, once we've had a chance to review the proposed amendment.
So what you want to do is move the water,
Yes, sir.
transfer the water for the pumping while they're drilling the wells.
Yes, sir. I saw a potential problem coming, and I made some requests to get some other land lined up, and it would be nice to have those water rights to be able to continue to farm the anticipated acreage that I was planning on having out there at the sanitation district.
Okay. Well, what do you want us to do? I'm not going to approve the wells. That makes him liable. He's responsible for those wells, correct?
Once they're in place, that's correct. However, I think, I'm not sure how many months.
What if you don't go through with the current lease?
Well, so if I may, and you may want to comment, but the wells will produce water. I think the useful life is something on the order of 20 to 30 years. And they would be our wells, and so they would produce water at that site for hopefully a 20 to 30-year period.
If not more, Mr. Chris, there's plenty of ag wells in the valley that we're still using with the rotary mud method that are 50 and 60 years old.
So it would still provide value to the district for the long term for the purpose of supporting the ranch. And depending on the time it would take for those wells to be built and installed, then there would be a remaining term on Mr. Calandri's lease, under which, depending on the terms of an amendment, where we could potentially craft with Mr. Calandri an amendment that would provide for the temporary transfer of water in the board's discretion, so that he could use those rights to farm and so he would not be damaged, and therefore hopefully the district would not have liability for damages to Mr. Calandri in that interim period. And then once those wells were up and running, then he could return to the land. But we would have to obviously negotiate those terms. But we'd be happy to try
How
to
soon
remain
can we have a special meeting?
as soon as, typically it's at least 24 hours, but from the time we notice and post an agenda.
Yeah, as soon as you all are available, we can work on a meeting.
I can do it in like 2 minutes.
I would recommend we do it for early next week or the week after.
Do it Thanksgiving morning.
Maybe at least 24-hour posting, but we would also need to.
I'll be here.
We both have AVA QMD next Tuesday at 10 o'clock.
You want to do it at 9?
I don't think we can get through it. Can you do a noon meeting next Tuesday?
Yes,
Can you guys,
assuming we
Figure it
review
out by
and
then?
Get it,
Well,
yes.
we'll figure it out.
okay, we're gonna make a decision next Tuesday, so agendize it for anything that you think that those crazy people can do, okay? So I wanna be able to do anything, so agendize it for that. Next Tuesday?
Tuesday, that works for both
Okay,
of you.
we'll move number 9 to next Tuesday at
At
noon.
noon.
Okay, number 10?
Item number 9 was deferred to next Tuesday. Item 10 is regarding a discussion regarding Antelope Valley recycled water planning.
I have a figure from the directors. There's some of the back also.
I passed them out to them. I passed them out to them.
I have a bigger one.
Okay. Thank you.
We can make this short, unless you have questions, I'd be glad to answer any. Staff just wanted to make a report to the board. As you may be aware, both districts 14 and 20 in the early 2000s adopted facilities plans for the long-term management of wastewater in this valley that involved producing high-quality tertiary recycled water for use by the cities and the water agencies in the valley. And there was a substantial investment made in those facilities. The idea was we would farm with the water to make sure it's managed until such time as the cities and the water agencies get a reclaimed water program together. And so we're about 10 years down the road now, and there's a little bit of reuse going on. Each city has some recycled water projects, but there's a whole lot of other projects that are in the works at this time. And so I just wanted to speak to a few of them. In general, those on your map there, those red lines, those are the large-scale agricultural lines that the sanitation district owns. But there are a number of other lines on there that have been built by the city of Lancaster. There's one that goes all the way down Division Street, down to M. The city of Palmdale has also built a line south from our plant to Macadam Park. But you can see on the bottom, there's all those dotted lines. Those are Palmdale Recycled Water Authority planned projects. So where we're at today, though, is the two districts have entered into agreements to sell the water either to the city of Lancaster, the city of Palmdale, the Palmdale Water District, and also LA County Water Works, District Number 40. So essentially, all the water that is available has been contracted for sale. So there are projects, though, you can see that's a very busy piece of paper. That's why I just wanted to show you. There is more projects out there than there is reclaimed water. So that's one issue, is that this valley will need to get together and decisions will have to be made in terms of priorities. And then the second item I just wanted to bring to your attention is there's another round of state grant funding, and all of us local jurisdictions are taking our integrated regional water management plan MOU updates to our boards right now. And so come next spring, there'll be a process where we have to get our projects on the list for possible state grant funding. And then there'll be another round after that in 2 years. So again, right now, the existing list for reclaimed water projects has a whole lot of projects on there, and there's far more projects than there is water. So we just wanted to update the board. At this point, we're not asking for the board's direction or anything. The agreements are already in place. There was talk a few years ago of reallocating the water between the two cities and the county. And you know, those talks broke down. I know Mr. Bozikian was involved in those as I was. So there's a chance that those could get going again. There's also a project that the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors is proposing, and that's a line heading north up 50th Street from our Palmdale plant, and it would serve almost all of the water from the Palmdale plant to a number of farmers along 50th Street. And that would have the advantage, if we could get those farmers to use reclaimed water, they're going to pump less groundwater. Presumably they would transfer that groundwater to our cities and our water districts, and it would help alleviate the over pumping in that part of the valley and also make more water available for our cities. So
my understanding is a lot of the east side water farmers did not go into the adjudication and don't have groundwater rights.
On the east side of town, I guess that's maybe true to a point. I think the big farmers along there, it's Kyle's and Calandry's and Van Dam's, and they were all very...
Van Dam's has several pieces in there that don't have water rights.
Yeah, I mean, Van Dam's in general got a very large chunk of water as part of the adjudication. Do they have enough water to farm all the stuff they're farming in this valley? No way. So I'm not certain which entities would get this water under this project, but certainly it's those types of folks that are growing more alfalfa, that sort of thing, along 50th Street that are interested in this project. The project still doesn't have a sponsor yet, but the state contractors are sponsoring at this point. And they've asked me to attend their meeting at the Palmdale Water District on Thursday. So, you know, we're supportive in concept. We're supportive of municipal reuse and helping to fix the groundwater adjudication and the imbalance between supply and demand. But ultimately, it's going to be the decision makers in this valley, at the cities and the water agencies, and then possibly this board, as to what the best and highest uses are. But right now, we've contracted for the sale of that water to the entities, and they'll need to sort out which ones they want to do. So we'll continue to support all projects that come our way. We support them with staff effort. We help with all the permitting. I've done some simple design work and cost estimating for the AV State Water Contractors on that 50th Street project already for them. And we'll see how it goes and which projects move forward.
Okay. Have any questions? Nope. Good job.
Item 10 is information only. Item 11 is regarding an update on the labor negotiations.
I just have a quick status report on the labor negotiations. We're briefing all of the boards that are meeting this month. We have been in negotiations for about 2 years with 4 of our employee units. They're represented by the union AFSCME, American Federation of State County Municipal Employees. The 2 main issues in these negotiations have been contribution to their PERS plan. The classic employees, the ones hired before pension reform, have not been contributing based on a COLA that they gave up in 1982. Since that time, the agency's been paying their 7%. We've been negotiating with employees. About 2/3 of our employees now pay some portion of their share of PERS. These folks have not agreed to do that. And without agreements, they have not received COLAs for the last 2 years, so that's the other main issue. There is a process we've been following. We received guidance from the Personnel Committee, which is made up of the chairs of each of the sanitation districts. At their direction, we declared impasse last spring, which sets up a formal process. We had mediation also in late spring, which was unsuccessful. We went to a third-party fact finder later this summer who looked at both sides of the negotiations, and she made a series of recommendations that the districts was able to concur with, although the union was not, and so that we didn't reach a settlement there. The union had filed a claim with the state that they were owed COLAs regardless of whether or not they had a labor agreement, and last week we received the ruling on that claim that it was dismissed, essentially siding with the sanitation districts. We did have one of the 4 units decertify from the union and make a deal with us on an agreement to contribute. They will also get their COLAs. And our next steps really are to circle back with our personnel committee at the end of January and see what happens in the meantime. But I'd be happy to, again, we're just following this process that's laid out and taking it step by step, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm good. It's a process.
It's a process, definitely, yes.
Okay, item 11 is information only. If there's no further business, we'll adjourn to November.
Wait a minute, I have, I think the instructions when Mr. Ledford was here, the instruction was to have as least amount of meetings as possible. Let's go back to monthly meetings. Or if you want to go back to, if you want to do quarterly meetings, that's okay with me. It's okay with the city of Lancaster. You're okay with it? If it's convenient for you guys.
It's whatever your preference is. When we have quarterly meetings, there may be cases where we have to meet in the interim for certain time-sensitive things. And obviously, if we go quarterly, the agendas get a little bit longer. It's just your preference whether you want.
I would prefer to meet on a monthly basis. I don't want
Okay.
the thing that's happened with Mr. Calandri. I think he's been caught up in this, and for us to do it every 3 months is a little difficult.
Okay, well, I'll work with my secretary to set up regular monthly meetings, and if there are no items, we can obviously cancel that and move on, but we'll at least have something scheduled on regular day and time.
I think that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, we stand adjourned. Just so you'll know, let me